welcome back to another Film Geek video. Well, the month of October has come and gone, so that means only one thing. It's time for me to rank all of the films that I saw in the month of October 2025. Now, the way these ranking lists go, it's really simple. This is just my complete and absolute opinion. This is not based off of any Metacritic, Rotten Tomato, anything like that. This is just my own personal enjoyment on all of these films that I saw in the month of October 2025. And there is a lot of horror and thrillers on this list. I tried to keep it within the season of spookiness, so everything except for like two things have something supernatural, thrillerish, horror-ish, something like that going on. Maybe it's a crime thriller, or maybe it's a mystery thriller. I tried to just kind of stay with that theme with all of the movies I saw in October. So you know what? It is enough of me sitting here jibber-jabbering on. We've got a lot of work to do because I saw a lot of movies in the month of October. This was my second biggest month of the year. I saw 13 different films this month alone in theaters and on streaming services, so I've had a pretty big month, so we got a lot of work to do, so it's enough of us sitting here jibber-jabbering on. It is time to head over to that series of tubes we like to call the internet, that information superhighway. It's time to rank all of the movies I saw in October 2025. Welcome to the internet, everybody. Let's get this party started. Now, starting off the month, yes, I do have a little bit of a spook fest that is my number one pick of the month. And in all honesty, the reason why this movie is finding itself at number one is because it looked like, once I found out exactly how much work and how much effort was put into this film by the filmmakers and, of course, its lead actor, I had to put this one at number one. And that is the horror film, A Good Boy. Now, Good Boy is a really neat little horror film. It's a horror movie about a haunting told from a dog's perspective. I don't mean like there's voiceovers or anything like that. We follow this dog as this other human being, its owner, is being haunted by some kind of ghost or some kind of supernatural force. And this film was such an amazing watch to actually get to see up on the big screen. The cinematography in this film was excellent. It was definitely on point. And our lead actor, Indy the dog, was excellent. This was 100% a good boy and so much fun to watch. This kind of movie you just don't get to see very often. And this is one of the reasons why I really love the genre of horror, because I feel like this is one of those horror movies, or just horror in general, you can actually just be able to tell so many different stories and different angles and look at things from different perspective and all. And horror is just one of those genres that allow you to do this kind of thing. I mean, someone being haunted, being told from the perspective of a dog. But then as you watch the film, you start to learn that maybe this isn't necessarily a haunting. Maybe there's something else at play here. Maybe there isn't something supernatural going on. Maybe there's a deeper meaning to what we're seeing up on the big screen. And I loved all that about this film. There are so many really cool, tense moments that are developed in this movie. Even though there is very little dialogue in this film, there is a little, because there are moments when the owner of Indy is out walking around and he's talking, and there's some other characters in this film. But one of the things about the humans in this movie that I really liked is you barely see the faces of any human beings in this movie whatsoever. Well, I take that back. There is one human that you do see his face a little bit, the grandfather of the person who owned the house that they're in and all. Well, that's something I guess I should tell the story, the plot of this. It tells the story of a man who moves to a small house out in the middle of nowhere to kind of deal with something that he has going on in his personal life, and he takes his dog Indy along with him for this journey. And the house that they're staying in has a bit of a legend attached to it about it being haunted by their grandfather. It was their grandfather's house and all, and so there's all this ghostiness going on and everything, and all of this film is told from the perspective of Indy the dog. Think of something like Courage the Cowardly Dog. That was something that I used in my review for this film, and I thought that that was a good perspective of how this worked, because most of those cartoons are like stories that are told from a dog's perspective. You know, what seems to be just like a vacuum cleaner to us humans is this mecha Godzilla-looking creature that the dog has to fight. So that's kind of what this movie is, and that's some of the things that are presented in this film, and I just absolutely loved every single moment of this movie. And yes, there there are some really great scares in this film. There's some really great moments of tension and everything. And just the fact that this is kind of one of those movies that can tell its story with such little dialogue and keep you so entertained. And I think that's what makes this movie just so great and why it is at the top of my list. Oh, and by the way, guys, I forgot to add this. Every movie that's on this list is a film that I have reviewed over on my channel, so I'm just going to kind of glaze over some things as we get into this. So if I don't actually go into too much depth or anything like that on any of these movies, you can always check out my reviews on my channel. Okay, guys, so let's move on to that number 2. Now, this is another movie that's in the thriller genre, and man, this movie had me glued the entire time, and that is A House of Dynamite. A House of Dynamite is directed by Catherine Bigelow, and it tells the story of different people in the US government moments before a missile is going to hit Chicago. And it's a nuclear missile. I guess I should add that. So we're looking at a world destruction kind of event going on here. And the whole story focuses on just the moments leading up to that. Now, I found this movie absolutely thrilling. I enjoyed every moment of this film. It's starring Idris Elba, and I thought he did a great job in his role. There's a lot of elements of this film that I just really loved. And this is one of those movies, too, that I really couldn't find anything on my personal level that I was negative on. One of the things that I do believe that a lot of people have commented on that they didn't like was the ending of this film. The ending of this movie, in my opinion, yeah, it is a bit divisive. But also, too, what people wanted as the ending of this film was not necessarily the story of the movie. Let me explain, okay? This movie's story is just the moments leading up to the inevitable, okay? And how the US government, or maybe any government, would deal with the events coming up to it. Trying to figure out who's responsible for this and exactly what steps we need to take after or before or whatever the case may be. You know, and there's a lot of different morality and everything that's brought up in this film, and I thought it was one hell of a watch. And being a kid that grew up during the Cold War, yep, I'm a Cold War kid. I was born in 1975. I still remember, I shit you not, this is true. We would have bomb drills, all right? Just like tornadoes or hurricanes or something like that in your area. We would have bomb drills also. And you know what we did to protect ourselves from the bomb? We got under our desks. Yeah. Just in case a nuclear bomb is about to hit your freaking city, remember, guys, if you put your hands over your head like this, and you get underneath a 1970s, 80s desk from an elementary school, you're 100% safe. Don't worry about refrigerators if you have a desk. You'll be just fine. But anyways, this film was excellent. I loved it from beginning to end, and it was just a nail biter. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Bringing up the next film, we're going back into more of a typical horror genre, and a movie that I am going to say right here, right now, of all of these films that I'm about ready to talk about, this is probably the one that you should be turning on this evening, maybe after the kids come home from trick-or-treating, or when you know that all those little guys are done trick-or-treating. Put this movie on, and that is the Shudder original, VHS Halloween. VHS Halloween is an anthology film, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one because this is one of those anthology films that actually works so much better if you do not know the plot of any of the movies coming up. But I will tell you that it's a really cool little idea. There's some really great concepts in this, and each one of these short films that are in this anthology are some kind of different style of horror film. So if you love a specific type of horror, you might find something for you in this film. I had a blast with it. I thought this movie was absolutely dripping with Halloween energy, and it's just fun. It is the kind of movie that you want to watch on Halloween. You have so many different varieties of tales. There's something funny, there's something scary, there's something depressing. There's all of your different stuff that you want to watch on that night of Old Hallows Eve, or Halloween, because Hallows Eve was yesterday. Anyways, let's move on to number 4, excuse me. Number 4. We're moving out of the thrillers, out of the horror, to one of our few films that was not a horror or anything like that, and that is the movie Good Fortune. Now, it does deal with angels, not devils. Good Fortune is starring Keanu Reeves Aziz Ansari and Seth Rogen. It tells the story of an angel who decides he's going to shake things up a little bit in this dude's life to try to teach him the true meaning of happiness and what to, basically be a good angel, right? This guy wants to be the best guardian angel out there. He wants to try to get a promotion, okay? So he finds Aziz Ansari, whose life is just falling to pieces. It just seems like this guy can't catch a break. And so Keanu Reeves, the angel, steps in. He's like, dude, let me show you, okay? It's not so great on the other side. If you trade places with this rich guy, you'll find out that having all the riches in the world just ain't what it's cracked up to be. But here's the catch to it. It was. Yeah, the guy loved it. He's like, okay, I'm rich now. All my problems are solved. Thank you very much, Angel. I ain't going back. Because that's the whole thing. He switches places with another guy who is Seth Rogen, who plays the rich guy in this. Think of someone like Jeff Bezos, okay? So he trades places with this guy, so now the rich dude is the poor guy, and the poor guy is the rich guy, and wackiness ensues. And what's so much fun about this movie is that it does bring up some topics of things that are very topical to today's people here in the United States. But what's good is that it doesn't bog you down with becoming preachy or anything like that, adding in some really great comedic performances from all of our lead actors with a really fun... Oh, I didn't mention Sandra Oh. Sandra Oh is in this also. She actually plays an important part. But anyways... this film is fun. It was a great time. And this came out too more at the beginning of the month. It's probably still in theaters. If you want to check this movie out, it was a blast. If you just want to go see something that's going to bring up some laughs. Now, this is not something that I would say is a belly laugh movie, okay? It's not like The Naked Gun that came out earlier, which is like parody and satire. And it's one of those movies that just makes you belly laugh or you just can't stop laughing for a minute. That's not this kind of movie. It's very funny, but it's more of a chuckle. Oh my God, isn't that weird? It's one of those movies that what they're talking about is either going to make you laugh or cry. Let's just put it that way. But I had a good time with this movie. It's a very solid film. So if you haven't seen Good Fortune yet, it might be getting near its end in theaters. Maybe not. Maybe it's still out there. But you'll probably find this one on streaming services here coming up. And if you're just in the mood to watch something kind of funny with a good message attached to it, check this one out. Alrighty, so that brings us to number 5 and diving back into the darkness of the demons and the devils and the creatures of the night. We're going with Shelby Oaks. Now, Shelby Oaks is the famously directed, good God almighty, Uggo, I think that calls for a drink. Alright, so this is Shelby Oaks. This is the film that's famously directed by fellow YouTuber Chris Stockman and fellow movie guy, because he doesn't really do like negative reviews anymore, and I could totally understand that as somebody who I hate giving negative reviews. I really do. But at the same time, I feel like it's my responsibility to be completely honest with you and tell you, hey, this ain't worth your money. When people are dropping anywhere between $20 and $15 to see a freaking movie, I feel like it's my responsibility to let you all know if it's worth your money or not. So that's just me. But I could totally understand having a movie or having a channel where all you want to do is talk about the good stuff about films and what you love about them and everything like that, because that was my channel before I started doing movie reviews, to be perfectly honest. When I first started this channel, all I did was talk about movies I liked. I didn't take anything negative. So I get it. I do not like being negative, but sometimes, you gotta. If you're gonna be a film reviewer, you gotta be negative. That's just the way it is. Alright, so anyways, moving into this, Shelby Oaks tells the story of a woman who is searching for her long-lost sister. This sister was a YouTuber also who did like a paranormal channel, and I loved this movie. So her sister goes to Shelby Oaks and then disappears. All of the people that were also with her at this channel that did like a ghost hunting channel and everything like that, they all vanish. Or no, they're found dead. Sorry, they're found dead. Sister gone, vanished, whatever. So her sister goes out looking for her. And the thing about this movie is that I feel like it was an absolute homage to things that Chris Stuckman absolutely loves in horror films. And that's what I liked about it, because in all honesty, I would probably make a horror movie like this. I kind of feel like when you're a first-time filmmaker, and this is a personal opinion thing, when you're a first-time filmmaker, you're gonna try to stick with what you know. You're not gonna want to, unless you have this absolutely outstanding, crazy idea that's going to completely change the world of cinema as we know it, you're probably going to try to play it a little bit on the safe side, throw in some homages to people that you really respect, and that's what you're going to come back with. And I think that's what Chris Stockman did here. He really shows a lot of love to the genre of horror by trying to throw in a lot of different elements that make up the entirety of the horror genre. And unfortunately for some people, what that kind of created was a very inconsistent mess, and I can completely understand that. But this film, to me, I liked it. I thought it was great. I thought that going into certain different types of filmmaking and different genres of horror really worked for me. The film itself is really kind of set up in different ways. The beginning of the movie, you think that you're going to get into more of a found footage mockumentary style film, something like Lake Mongo, which if you're a person who follows Chris Stuckman, you know that he's a big fan of that film. And then the second part of the movie becomes something more like investigation horror like Ring. And then in the end of it, again, if I give away that one, in my opinion, it gives away kind of the plot point of where all of this is headed, and so I'm not going to get into it. But I thought that this was a very entertaining film. I had a good time with it. I'm looking forward to adding this movie to my collection. As I've said a million times, I am a huge fan of first-time directors and seeing their first movie, and I always like to know what they're going to bring to the table. So in all honesty, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to see what Chris Stockman has to offer. In my opinion, what I think that the people are going to want from him is to try to get into maybe more of an action-oriented, because this one was a bit more in the slow burn category of horror, so maybe something like a nice little slasher film. That might be something cool. I mean, you're a person who does like the old slasher movies there, Chris, so maybe like a deconstructed different way of looking at a slasher. Who knows? I'm just a dude on the internet talking about movies. What do I know? But anyways, yes, Chris Stockman, good job. Love this film. Keep making movies. Keep your head up. All that good stuff. Whatever, we're moving on. Okay, we're moving on to another film that I just thought, yeah, this movie, the more I think about this film, the more I really like this movie, and that is The Mastermind. The Mastermind is a crime thriller that tells the story of a man that has really no criminal background whatsoever. You're kind of led to believe that he does, to be perfectly honest, the way this movie's structured. But yeah, this guy has no real criminal background of actually committing crimes. And this guy decides that he is going to be the mastermind of a big art heist. And to be perfectly honest, he pulls it off. And he does a good job, actually. And there's other elements that get all this stuff going, but he ends up, he's on the lam, and he's being chased by the police and all this other stuff. But there's a lot of really cool, quiet moments of this film that I really enjoyed about this entire movie. The film itself is a very small movie, and I don't mean that in a bad way. What I mean by a small movie is it's more of a character study on the lead character, the mastermind, and what drove him to this life of crime. And the thing about this film too is that a lot of people I know are like, hey, this is unrealistic. There's no way this guy could have gotten away with this crime the way it's presented and all. But I do want to remind you that the movie is set in the 70s, somewhere in there, and that the fact that there is a moment where they're protesting the Vietnam War, that means it's probably somewhere from 70 to 75, all right? So that's just to give you an idea of where it comes in at. And yeah, there wasn't any kind of real security like we have today. There wasn't a lot of that. So to be perfectly honest, you probably could at some small little podunk freaking museum that might have some very expensive paintings in there, because maybe it's attached to a college or something like that. But yeah, I bet someone could have easily have just stolen all that stuff and taken off. Look into the story of B.D. Cooper if you want to understand more about these kind of heists, because it's kind of fascinating, but there's no way that he could have gotten away with that crime by today's standards. But anyways, guys, if you're looking for just a very interesting, different type of crime thriller, then The Mastermind might be something that you're interested in. And what I mean by that this is a quiet film is that this is not a big heist type of movie. It's more focused on the person who's trying to plan it, and then Most of the story is him just trying to stay away from the police. The actual heist of this film happens really quick. This is not Ocean's 11. This is not The Italian Job. This is something a little bit different. It's a little smaller scale and all, but I really enjoyed the fact that it's a very, in my opinion, a much more grounded in reality, one dude deciding just one day, I'm gonna commit a crime. So I thought that was kind of cool about this movie. Alright, so bringing us to number 7 is getting back into the non-thriller, non-horror aspect of everything, and that is Tron, Ares, or as I like to call it, So, You Hired Jared Leto. Anyways, this film is not necessarily bad because of him. It's not necessarily bad either, but it's not necessarily good. It's one of those movies that, for me, fell right there in the middle. So Tron Ares tells the story. It's the ongoing story of Tron, except this one is not necessarily connected to the last movie that came out, Tron Legacy. It has a little bit more of a connection to the first Tron movie, which I don't know why they structured this movie this way. There was some things about this movie that had me intrigued. I did enjoy. The action of this film was on point. The special effects in this movie were on point. And one of the things that I thought was really fun too was the way that the characters... Oh gosh, I did it again. The plot of this movie. Okay, so the plot of this movie is the grid or Tron world coming into the real world. And the lead character in this movie, Ares, is played by Jared Leto. And that's all you need to know right now. Jared Leto is in the movie, and whatever. So, anywho, I did like some things about this movie. The special effects were really on point. They looked great. The action was on point. The story just was very hollow. When the film started going, it just lost me, but there was a lot of stuff that I did enjoy, and I thought this was a perfectly acceptable watch it at home on Disney Plus movie, but the fact that this movie was really pushing its IMAX experience, and the fact that IMAX tickets in some areas cost over $20. Jeez, man, like seeing Jared Leto for $60, that's... yeah, okay, so anyways... This movie is not necessarily terrible, but it's not necessarily something that I think is worthy of paying a full price ticket to on the IMAX experience. Let's just put it that way. This was great if you're going to watch it at home on Disney Plus, and you'll probably have a great time with it. But for me personally, it wasn't all that. It was fun, but it wasn't all that. Alright, so that brings us moving back into the horror film genre, and in another food movie that I had some criticism on, but at the end of the day I found fun, The Elixir. So we're going to bring in The Elixir. The Elixir comes to us all the way from Indonesia, and it tells a story of this drug. It's an herbal hospital, like they make different herbal remedies and things of that sort, right? Well, so the president or CEO of this company had developed this new type of elixir that is supposedly supposed to make you young again. Well, it definitely makes you the undead, but making you young again, that might not necessarily be true. It kind of does, and then it makes you into a zombie. So then the zombies start attacking this small town, and wackiness ensues. Now, my biggest criticism I have on this film is, number one, the characters. Now, I started thinking about this. Yes, all of the characters in this film make horrible choices, and they're just idiotic to anybody who has been soaked in the zombie world. But the thing about this movie is that the people in this film don't know anything about zombies, so you kind of have to just let yourself forget everything that you know about zombies from like the last 20 fucking years, and then just be like, okay, these guys don't know anything about zombies. In that aspect, you might have a little bit more enjoyment in this film. Also, one of my biggest complaints was it takes so long for these guys to start fighting back against the zombies. And I understand, you know, they're your family, your friends and everything, but the movie starts with the patriarch of the family taking the elixir, the family who owns this company that makes this stuff. He takes the elixir, turns into a zombie in front of them, starts attacking everybody, and they spend the entire time trying to reason with the zombie. And then the next character does it, and it just kind of keeps going like that for, I said, 45 minutes of the film. They don't even really try to fight back against them. They just run away, and they're like, no, I can't hurt you, you're my friend. And then you're like, God dang it, dude, this thing's trying to kill you. So that got super irritating, but all in all, the special effects were on point. The fun factor is there. The film is a little long, but at the end of the day, it's still a good time. maybe watch it the day after Halloween when you're recuperating from that pumpkin ale hangover that you have. Okay, that brings us to number 9, and this is one of the few other non-thriller films, and that is the biopic Christie. Now, this necessarily wasn't a bad movie. This is starring Sydney Sweeney, and she does an excellent job. This tells the story of Christy Martin, the professional boxer. And she was also probably the woman that you could consider the one that started it all. She was definitely part of the beginning of this back in the 90s. And this tells her story, and let me tell you guys, she does have a very unique and different story. But the problem with this movie is, it is a typical biopic. This is not a movie, in my opinion, that you would want to go see in theaters. This seems like something that would be absolutely perfect for Netflix, and maybe it would probably reach more people on a streaming service like that, because I just don't feel like people are going to drop $15 to $20 to go see yet another biopic, because we're kind of biopicked out at this point. I mean, this came out the weekend after. Or not, well, it didn't come out. I'm sorry. I saw an early showing. This movie hasn't even actually come out yet. And the only reason that it's on the list is because, yes, I did see it in the month of October. That this film actually comes out next month in November. It comes out November 7th. So I got a little confused there. But yes, this movie I saw the weekend after the Bruce Springsteen biopic, which was a little bit... I'm not going to get into that one because I didn't do a review on it. But this movie completely follows your typical rise to stardom. Now my stardom is starting to kind of fall apart, and then I'm going to regain my stardom kind of biopic. And while Sydney Sweeney's performance was awesome and definitely on point, she does a very good job in this movie, it really came off as Oscar bait at the end of the day. Not terrible, but definitely something that if you would have caught it on a streaming service or something, you probably would have enjoyed it a lot more than if you would have paid full price for a ticket for it. Let's just put it that way. Okay, that brings us to number 10, going back into the horror realm, and this is the horror film... Excuse me, I need another... It's Vicious, by the way, but I need another drink. Vicious. All right. Now, Vicious wasn't terrible, but it wasn't necessarily good either. And this tells the story of a woman who's at home one night by herself, and another woman shows up at her door. She offers her this box and says that she has to do these certain things in order to make the box happy. And if she doesn't do these certain things, then the box is going to unleash chaos upon her and her loved ones. And there was some really cool stuff that is brought to the table in this film, but at the end of the day, it just came off as a really, why are we doing this kind of movie? Because none of the really cool ideas really flesh out. There are some good scares, there are some really good moments of some fear and all, but the unfortunate thing is at the end of this movie, nothing really wraps up and comes into a real satisfying ending. And with movies like this, you've got to have a really solid ending, and this movie just didn't deliver it on it for me, but there's some other stuff here for you. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, but I thought it was perfectly acceptable for anybody who might not necessarily be into super duper horror, which really is going to frighten you a whole lot with tons of gore and everything. There is a little bit of gore in this film, but it's not something overwhelming or anything like that. Nothing Terrifier level. It's just some blood, a little bit of gore, some very uncomfortable close-up gore moments that make you cringe. But all in all, this was a perfectly acceptable little horror film that's on a streaming service. I believe this one was on Hulu. So it's not something you saw in theaters. So if you want to sit down and watch this on Halloween night, it's not necessarily a bad little watch, even though I think it's more of a Christmas haunt kind of movie. But anyways, I digress. We're moving on. So that brings us to number 11, and sticking with the horror is Other. Other tells the story of a woman who is dealing with the death of her mother. She goes back to her childhood home to kind of deal with getting her mother's things together after her death, and while she's there, she deals with some tragedy and all in her childhood. This wasn't necessarily a terrible horror film. It does present some pretty cool stuff. Again, this is Night Vicious also. It doesn't really necessarily flesh out a lot of stuff, but it's not necessarily a terrible watch. There was some pretty nice little spooky moments and everything. There's some decent moments of body horror in this film, but if you're wanting to look for a film that tells how you need to stay pretty and things of like that sort and all, being, the cornfield queen or whatever, watch watch The Substance, because I feel like that is a way better movie that's trying to tell you the same kind of metaphor that this movie tries to do, but it doesn't quite latch onto it. It tries to kind of do things about gender roles and everything, but it kind of comes off a little bit more surfacey when it comes to the metaphor aspect of this film, but it does deliver some creepazoid scares and all. This is a movie that's on Shudder. It's just, you know, your time. If you have Shudder, this is a movie that maybe you'll like. It does have a good little creep factor to it, so, you know, Shudder, check it out. I don't think this is something that you would get a subscription to Shudder for, but if you already have one, give it a watch. Okay, that brings us on to a Netflix original, and this is a movie that I just did a review on, and it will probably pop up at the end of this. Ballad of a Small-Time Player. So, our Ballad of a Small Player. Ballad of a Small Player. This film was okay. This movie tries to be a lot of things, and it doesn't really succeed at all of them. I didn't necessarily enjoy this movie. I think that there's a market for this film. I think some people will like it, but unfortunately for me, it just didn't land. It didn't really come together. So this tells the story of a gambler who's in Macau, and he's trying to win back his fortune. And the problems I had with this film, to be perfectly honest, is mostly the main character. He's not necessarily a likable guy. He's an absolutely terrible human being. And so there's a lot of aspects about this movie that he's just a very unlikable character. And then some aspects of this film, he gets redemption, and you're just like, but he didn't earn it. Like, the character himself doesn't really go through any kind of trials and tribulations to earn anything good that happens. And there's kind of some subtlety that's given to it on what could be happening with this guy, but again, this film does a very bad job of fleshing out any kind of metaphor or any type of subplot that it's trying to have. There's little things that are thrown at you, and I bring some of that up in my review, and so you can check that out. But one of the things I was going to bring up in this one is that there's this whole idea that there is a slim possibility that his character isn't necessarily in the real world. But that, again, doesn't get fleshed out. There's another character that may or may not be real, doesn't necessarily get fleshed out. This is just not getting fleshed out, the movie. And even though that sounds insanely frustrating, it is not nearly as frustrating as the next film, because there's still some artistic areas that this film goes to that makes it a very watchable film. And maybe you're somebody who really enjoys that extremely ambiguous type of film that allows you to kind of make up your mind in some areas. But I felt like this movie asks a lot of questions and answers zero of them. I mean, when you're doing an ambiguous film, there has to be some things that are solid and then some things that are left up to you. But this movie just sits there and it literally does that thing where it's like, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And then you're like, okay, so which one was it? I don't know, man. That's up to you. But you didn't give me any direction on any of those that could possibly be the answer to those questions. And so that's why I found this film very frustrating. The cinematography is gorgeous, the acting is on point, the city itself looks amazing. I love the look of everything, the architecture, the buildings, all of this looks gorgeous in this film. It's a very technical level, beautifully done film. It's just the story of this movie was terrible. It's why it didn't find itself as the bottom. That's why it's just a step above the bottom. Now the last film on this list fails in all areas. This is the only film that I will tell you in the month of October, just skip it. Don't bother with it. Move on. And that is the Netflix original, The Woman in Cabin 10. The Woman in Cabin 10 tells a story of a journalist who goes on this mega yacht with a bunch of billionaires, and there's a reason why she's there. Anywho, she goes on this yacht, and while she's on the yacht, she meets this woman, and then the woman ends up dead. Oh, or she thinks she's dead. She thinks the woman falls into the ocean, okay? And the reason why I keep saying think is even though we, the viewers, know we saw what we saw, everyone gaslights this woman. This is Gaslight the movie, even though there is a movie named Gaslight, which is where the term gaslight came from. Anyways, this film is just, nah, man. That's the whole movie. Like, whenever this woman brings up anything, even if she has solid evidence, every one of the billionaires on the boat, nah, man, no, no, no. It's just constant throughout this entire movie. The story was weak. The situation was weak. The only thing in this film that was decent was the acting in this movie. I thought everybody did a good job with the absolutely terrible, boring mystery script that this film had. But other than that, there was nothing really on this movie, and this is the problem too. I can't remember a whole lot of this film. The only things I remember was the mystery was boring, the movie was boring, and that's pretty much it. Okay? This was just a skip it, don't waste your time. You'll see it in your Netflix, and it will probably be in the top 10 because it is based off of a book that did really well. And if this was the way that the book was structured too, holy crap, come on. But if you want to see my full thoughts on this film, go ahead and check it out on Netflix, or not Netflix, check it out on my channel. I'm not going to go any more in depth in this film. It's just awful, unwatchable, terrible, terrible film. Well, there you have it, guys. Yes, that brings us to the end of October and the end of the rankings. Thanks again for checking out the Film Geek, guys. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you could do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.